It's time to forget the modular missteps of the past year. For its 2017 flagship, LG goes extra tall, extra shiny, and builds out some spectacular camera features. I'm Alex with Android Central, and this is our review of the LG G6. Aside from some genuinely impressive wide-angle camera tricks, the LG G5 was kind of a mess. So in creating the G6, LG has mostly gone back to the drawing board. The G6 is crafted from metal and glass, and now the battery is fully sealed in, so you won't be popping off the back to swap power packs. As a result, this thing feels solid and well built, with clean lines, precise joins, and a pleasing contrast between the deliberately flat front face and the more ergonomic curved rear. This isn't a rugged phone by any means, but it feels much more sturdy than anything LG has produced before. I've got to admit, I didn't immediately fall in love with the G6's design. I had the chance to use it for a couple of days in Korea at LG HQ before reviewing it here in Barcelona, and it's taken that time for me to really appreciate the G6's unconventional looks. It's actually a welcome respite from the sea of phones with 2.5D glass on the front, and LG says the more angular sides on the flat display can help the G6 take more punishment than its curvier rivals. That mostly refers to drops, not scratches though. I've already picked up some abrasions on the back of this thing after just a couple of days of use. A big part of what makes the LG G6 look so unusual is the extra tall nature of its 5.7-inch screen. Whereas most phones have 16:9 aspect ratios, the G6 is the first to bump it up to 18:9, or more accurately 2:1, which lets it increase the information density and introduce some interesting new software features to take advantage of its lanky proportions. That 2:1 aspect ratio lets LG split many of its own apps into two square sections, with rich visuals up top and extra room for information down below. And obviously a taller screen is great for multi-window too, allowing you to see more of each individual app. The rest of the software builds on the work LG started last year with the G5 and V20, making things a bit more visually consistent throughout, and setting out a refreshed design language with lighter colours, plenty of rounded rectangles, and geometric graphics that fit with Google's material design language. And the G6 also has the honour of being the first non-Pixel phone to ship with Google Assistant. The AI works exactly the same as it does on Google's phone, with context-sensitive answers based on the info on your Google account and Google's knowledge graph. It's just unfortunate that so few third-party apps take advantage of the new taller screen the same way LG's own apps do. And obviously an 18:9 screen will leave you with unsightly black bars at the sides when you're watching standard 16:9 videos. And the new rounded corners of the screen, while they're a neat design touch, annoyingly don't quite match up with the corners of the bezel. It's a minor thing, but something you can never unsee. As for the quality of the screen, a 2880x1440 resolution IPS LCD, I've been impressed so far. Compared to the disappointingly dark display of the G5, the G6's screen looks fantastic. Colours are bright and vivid, but not too oversaturated, and the panel is easily bright enough to be visible even under direct sunlight here in Barcelona. The G6 is way more than just a pretty glass exterior and a taller than average screen though. On the inside, it's running a Snapdragon 821 processor with 4GB of RAM and 32GB of storage in most markets outside of Asia. As this phone launches, we're just a few months out from seeing the first devices with the upcoming Snapdragon 835, but the 821 is still a fine chip that runs great on the G6. And sure, 32GB is a little on the low side, but that's mostly mitigated by the microSD slot. It's also really important to see LG getting on board with water resistance, with an IP68 rating for water and dust resistance, meaning you don't need to worry about using it out in the rain or giving it a quick dunk in the sink. However, some of the G6's other tentpole features have weird geographic restrictions. The Quad DAC, an upgraded version of the audio feature from the V20, is only available in parts of Asia, and wireless charging is exclusive to the US, so other regions will have to make do with good old-fashioned cable charging of a Quick Charge 3. And if you want a 64GB G6, that's also restricted to parts of Asia and Eastern Europe. Whatever other problems LG phones have had in the past, they've always excelled at photography, and the G6 is no exception. Around the back, you get both standard and wide-angle shooters at 13 megapixels, this time using the same sensor. There are some differences in terms of the optics though. The standard camera has a bright f1.8 lens with optical stabilization. On the wide angle, it's f2.4 without OIS, so predictably, the wide angle camera doesn't do quite as well in low light. But here's the amazing thing. On paper, the G6's main sensor isn't anything special, with smaller 1.12 micron pixels, yet the overall package with that bright lens and OIS beats the Galaxy S7 and goes toe-to-toe with the Google Pixel in the dark, thanks in part to LG's software tuning. And although the wide-angle camera can become grainy in darker conditions, it's miles ahead of the old 8 megapixel sensor from the V20 and G5. I guess the main takeaway here is that I was ready to be underwhelmed by the G6's cameras just based on the numbers, and instead I've been very pleasantly surprised. This is a fantastic camera setup, with fine detail performance to rival some of the best out there, and great dynamic range. It's also been great to get reacquainted with the 125-degree wide-angle camera, a feature that I loved in the G5 but soon had to leave behind because the rest of that phone was so disappointing. It's true that the difference in optics reduces fine detail in wide-angle shots, but still, just being able to push a button and capture a really wide field of vision is incredibly fun. Around the front, there's a 5-megapixel 100-degree camera that can switch between a cropped-in view and a wider angle to fit in both your friends, a bit of extra scenery, or both. Low light performance of the front facer isn't great, especially in video mode, but it's perfectly fine for sharing on your phone via Facebook or whatever else. The G6's rear shooters make for a much more capable video camera, with software stabilization features that you may remember from the V20. As usual, the regular camera does a bit better in the dark compared to the wide angle, and at a normal walking pace, LG stabilization does a good job of smoothing stuff out, with only minimal ghosting in tougher lighting conditions. And on the software side, LG has also expanded its camera app to take advantage of the new 2:1 aspect ratio, with a film strip view giving you your last few photos alongside the viewfinder. The G6's battery may not be removable, but I found the integrated 3300 mAh cell to be good for a solid day's use here in Barcelona, even over the course of a few busy days getting ready for the MWC show. Bouncing between LTE and Wi-Fi and taking a couple hundred photos each day, I found to take the G6 off its charger around 8 AM and I start running out of juice again around 10 PM. And that's pretty much standard for a high-end Android phone right now, full day's use but probably not much more than that. And naturally, should you need a midday refresh, Qualcomm Quick Charge 3 has you covered. So when I look back on many of the gimmicks LG's tried over the years in the G series, the most striking thing about the G6 is how this time the focus is on just making a good, balanced phone. As much as you could argue that the taller display is indeed a gimmick, LG's doing enough with it that it's not just there for the sake of it. The core experience is great too, from the good-looking design, fantastic display, solid performance and battery life, and that's complemented by a surprisingly great camera setup with some really fun features. The G6 isn't exactly cutting edge in every area. LG tells me it deliberately isn't playing the spec game this time round. Even so, the G6's success is going to depend on its price tag, especially when you consider the Galaxy S8 is just a couple of months away. Regardless, right now the LG G6 is a solid phone that I can absolutely recommend. Be sure to check out our behind the scenes video to find out more about the technology and design decisions that went into this phone, and subscribe so you don't miss a video in future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.